Welcome back. Former President Trump's tax returns were just released. We don't have many details about what's in them yet, but these are the returns from 2015 to 2020. A House committee voted last week to make his financial records public following a years-long battle with the former president to release those documents. So joining us now is 9 News legal analyst Whitney Traylor. Good morning. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning. I barely made it.
And this just broke a few minutes ago. So first, let's go back. Talk about why this is such a big deal for presidents to share tax returns and how it even started.
Right. Well, I love that question because some people would say this is much ado about nothing. They're saying, well, he doesn't have to release it. But every president since Nixon has released their tax returns. And some people would say, well, the tax returns is sort of another dimension of the president, and the president should be held to a higher standard, and we should see what investments they've made, if they're making good business decisions, whatever may be revealed. And so here, a lot of people are saying, well, it doesn't mean anything. But on the other hand, people are saying, no, this is the first time you haven't done it. It suggests you're hiding something. And now, even though they just got released, the Ways and Means Committee has released a summary of it. And so we know some of the big things. And they're concerned about some of the foreign investments that he may have made. And of course, these issues have come up in civil and criminal lawsuits where the Trump organization has already been found liable. So
I want you to get into some of the specifics because you know a little bit more. Again, they were just released a few minutes ago, but President Trump, former President Trump, is the first one in decades to not release his tax returns, but he is not the first president to not want to release his
right.
tax returns, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, no, that's exactly right, because it is an intimate situation and we don't know what's there and where the investments are. But again, this is our highest elected official. That, in my opinion, it should be something, and the Senate is actually considering codifying it, making it a law, but it currently isn't a law. But some of the complexities that came out was or some of the major points that came out. The IRS has said it's so complex. He has over 400 entities, foreign and domestic, and they have one agent on it, and they're literally saying we need 2 senior agents and a whole team. But people are looking at both the foreign investments in Russia and Saudi Arabia, which we know about, over $21 million in deductions in 2015 for 158 acres of real estate with no appraisal. There were cash donations of $500,000 in 2018 and 19 without substantiation. So these are some of the red flags where people are saying this just doesn't make sense.
Some of the charitable donations and some of the overseas stuff, because there are laws with how much or if a president can give to organizations overseas.
Well,
right?
that's exactly right. So this is the issue. So there's something called the emoluments clause, which says that a president can't engage in foreign investments for obvious reasons, for the potential of fraud. In fact, when the founders were debating what the office should look like, they were looking at 3 presidents, they were looking at all these different things, and they decided to actually pay the president a salary to help to prevent the issue of fraud or bribery. Now a $400,000 salary isn't much for these guys. But the emoluments clause is if he's investing in foreign and there's lawsuits going on about that. So this is all going to be, but the returns are so complex. And so for me, it was really fascinating because I had my own practice. And so I was a lawyer who learned business and I wasn't a business person, but I've learned so much about it. So reading these tax returns from a business perspective, it was really interesting. And because there's all these different entities and everything really flowed up to 2 umbrella companies. And that's where everybody's saying the big fish are, if you will.
It'll be really interesting to see how this all plays out now that former President Trump has launched another campaign for 2024, whether this plays into it all or not.
Well, I think it will play into it because there's so many lawsuits where he's facing some legitimate issues criminally and civilly. And the question is, we've never had this with a president who may potentially be convicted of a crime. What will the punishment, how do you impose a sentence like that? So, and whether that will prevent somebody from running in the future. So these are all things that will, it's complex, but in a way it's good because it helps us to figure out our democracy and figure out how our government is going to work. This is developing precedent, if you will.
We appreciate you pivoting so fast because, again, this just came out a few minutes ago. You're sticking around. We're going to talk about, I believe, Southwest coming up in the next hour as well. Whitney, thank you.
Sure thing.